The potential friction between Boehner and his base over Benghazi is not the only question on the table today. What could be just as intriguing will be how Democrats react to Boehner's Benghazi gambit, by either shunning it and letting the Republicans fight it out among themselves, or by participating. Congressman Adam Schiff is a Democrat from California. And Congressman, we just played really the tail end of Mr. Boehner's remarks, in which he added Benghazi to the mix, sort of as his throw down the microphone ending. But the fact that this wasn't front and center in his leadership meeting does make this seem like this is more about really watching out for the base and doing what the base wants than it is about sort of a broad fact-finding mission. That being the case, if that is true, why would Democrats participate in such hearings at all?
Well, look, there are some arguments to be made in favor of participating. If the Democrats aren't at the table, the argument is the Republicans will have basically the sole microphone. Democrats can't elicit contrary evidence from the witnesses. And that's true. At the same time, you have to ask yourself, after umpteen committees that have investigated Benghazi, when is enough enough? What powers would this committee have that, for example, Darrell Issa and the Government Reform Committee haven't already had? He has run that committee with an iron fist. He's had the power of subpoena. We saw what bipartisanship looks like on Benghazi most graphically in one of the iconic images now of this Congress, when Darrell Issa tried to cut the microphone. Elijah Cummings was talking. That's their idea of a bipartisan investigation. So I think your question is a good one. Why participate in that? Why legitimize that? I come down on the side of recommending that we not do that. It's not as if this is our first hearing, first committee on this. And I think, Joy, you used exactly the right word when you used the word appeasement in terms of the Speaker appeasing his base. Because let's not forget, just a month ago, the Speaker was against this and said, what's the point of having another committee to do months and months and months of more hearings? The Republican chair of the Armed Services Committee, Buck McKean, said at a certain point, you've got to say, when is asking the same questions over and over and getting the same answers? When is enough enough, and when do we move on? Well, you know, there's been no there. It's time to move on. Well,
and to your point, and we just put up a little while ago, so the number of hearings that there have been at least 4 reports, have been dozens and dozens and dozens of hearings that have turned up really nothing other than a lot of fundraising, because your colleagues are actually fundraising off of Benghazi and doing quite well at it. There's actually been a robust fundraising response to Benghazi when an email goes out or a chain mail goes out saying, hey, you've got to, contribute to your local Republican committee. So if, in fact, this is a fundraising push for the Republicans, if this is, in fact, really sort of base coddling by John Boehner, again, I come back to, you said there were good reasons to argue for participating. I don't know what those would be.
Well, it's a close question. I'm clearly on the side that Democrats shouldn't give this any more credibility that it deserves, and it doesn't deserve any credibility. But there are arguments, I think sound arguments to be made for being at the table. But nonetheless, I think you're right. This is something the Speaker has agreed to do to placate the base inside the Beltway and excite the base outside the Beltway. I don't see any reason for us to give that enhanced credibility by joining it in what will ultimately be, just like the Darrell Issa committee, a very partisan conclusion first, then facts later kind of investigative process. So, after 4 investigative committees, hearings in Foreign Affairs and Armed Services and the Intelligence Committee where I sit, in Government Reform, 2 more that were bipartisan actually in the Senate that debunked all the conspiracy theories, and very high-level accountability review board conclusions by 2 very well-respected people on both sides of the aisle. At a certain point, you got to say, how long are we going to distract ourselves from the business of the country in trying to increase the minimum wage, provide jobs for people, make sure that people have adequate health care? And I think that time has come. One final point I would make on this is there are, legitimate questions, and always have been, about what's the state of our security around the world at our embassies? Where are we in the hunt for people that are responsible for killing Americans? And we all in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party take very seriously the loss of American lives. And if the focus were on that, we'd be with them.
Right.
But the focus isn't. It's all about raising money for the base, from the base, and exciting the base to turn out next November.
Right.
And and going after Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, that's just really, we're out of time, but I just want to ask you very briefly, your leadership, Nancy Pelosi, as well as Congressman Clyburn, have been focusing on the composition of the committee, and that's really been their argument. Would you recommend that they stop arguing over the composition and just say no to participating at all? Very briefly.
You know, our leadership is bending over backwards to be fair and say, are you serious about this? And really test whether the Speaker means to have a truly independent body look at this that will work in a bipartisan fashion. The Speaker's made it clear, no, that's not what he's interested in. He's not interested in a committee like the Ethics Committee. That would be nonpartisan. He wants a partisan advantage. He wants sole control over subpoenas. Right. But I think it was more than appropriate for our leadership to probe whether they're serious about an even-handed committee, and plainly, they're not.
All right, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California, thank you.